Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with Emmett Muckles. Today is the day that God has given you another chance. Today is the day that life has given you another chance. What are you going to do with it? You're already a billionaire. And if you don't know, and if you haven't listened to this podcast before, then I'm going to explain it to you. 30 days after your inception, when mommy met daddy, they had a little fun, probably a couple drinks, you were created, at least the beginning. 2 became 4, 4 became 8, 8 became 16 for 30 days, and then you were over 1 billion cells and you hadn't hit the planet yet. So you are a billionaire. So let's get to the living part. And we're going to talk about cash flow, making that dough. You know, cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar bill with Amanda Fischer, the cash flow queen. Hi, dear. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I told you. It's a click. So what's going on in your life? You're in Australia. COVID's happening. They're shutting stuff down, but we still have to live. And one thing, and I don't know about Australia or many other parts of the country, but I know about United States. Financial literacy, we're illiterate. Most of us are illiterate. And you refer to yourself as a financial educator. How did that come about? Now, this lends itself to my main question. What brought you to now?
So, I'm a what you'd call a CPA, and my training has been, doing all the tax stuff, all the standard things that a CPA does. And what I realized over the years was that I naturally educated my clients. And in fact, if I go back to high school, which I actually did in Canada. I grew up in Canada. I'm Australian, but I grew up in Canada. And my mates in high school all told me I should be a teacher. And I went, you have to be kidding me. The last thing I want to do is stand up in front of a class of unruly kids and try and teach. It's like, that would be my worst nightmare. So I just brushed it aside and said, no. I'm not a teacher. I'm not doing that.
Right.
But what I found with particularly with our online accounting systems, you've got QuickBooks Online, we use Xero a lot here in Australia, and once I started implementing that with clients, they started to ask more questions. And what I realized what I was doing inherently was I was always teaching them. I was always explaining what the numbers were. And so the natural progression then was that, well, what am I then? I'm more than just your CPA. I'm more than just the accountant that you do the tax work. And I'm not quite sure. I kind of became I'm a bit more of a teacher. I'm an educator.
Yeah.
And then I don't teach everything. So it became the financial educator. It's like, yeah, that's what I do. So that's how I got to where I am now.
So have you come across people who don't understand a profit and loss statement or even know what it is? And I'm not talking about everyday people, but I'm talking about entrepreneurs, business people who don't know what a profit and loss statement is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the worst case I've seen was I was at a conference. I was one of the mentors, and a fellow came up to me, and look, he had to have been at least 50 something. And he said to me, I kind of got a confession to make. I said, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. He said, I've been in business for 25 years. I have no idea about my numbers.
What?
None. My mum does the bookkeeping. My mum does all of that stuff. When we go and see the accountant to sign the taxes, my mum goes and she tells me if it's okay to sign it. Now, I'm just blown away with 25 years in business with no idea. At a secondary level, I'm also going, how old is your mum now? And how many more years is mum going to be able to do that? And a slightly different level, and I'm not normally suspicious, but also then I wonder how much your mum's told you the truth, or what, has your mum actually done the right thing?
Yeah.
Or years. Like that's a sort of not a very nice thing to say, but I kind of at the back of my mind was, geez, I wonder, like, to be so blindly, following on from whatever mum said, would just absolutely horrify me. So that's the worst case I've come across in my working life to date. But as a general rule, I find most people, most entrepreneurs, when they start out in business, have no idea about their business numbers. They may have some idea of, how to balance the numbers at home in terms of, money coming in. We've got the rent or the mortgage, the food, that kind of stuff. But at a business level, very few of them have any idea. And they usually get maybe a couple of years down the track and realize that they need help. They really need help to take their business further, because if you don't know your numbers, you're just spinning wheels and just a whole raft of things that go wrong because you don't know what the numbers are and don't know what to look for and how to improve them. Yeah. And just more hustle doesn't always get you a better result. If you're not making money on your margin isn't right, then you can sell 1,000 things and you're still not making money.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who has a passion he wants to build this business. And I said, what's the numbers? He's like, I just know this will work. I said, what's the numbers? He's like, I know it's going to work. What's your funding? Well, I was like, he was like, just help me write a business plan. I was like, first of all, you got to know your numbers. You got to know what your traffic is going to be if you're selling an item. There's a whole bunch of things. I've had businesses before, but I did it the grassroots way. I started off saying I could do something. Then someone took me up on it and I did it. And then they paid me and I didn't pay myself. I went and bought more gear until eventually, I built a business that way. And that's my customary way. But when it comes to numbers, when should you invest in a financial mentor like yourself? Because here's where it comes. Most people say, I can't afford it.
And that is the whole point. So ideally, I would love to say before you start. But because the reality is exactly what you just said. Before you start, what are the numbers? How many sales do you need to have to cover your costs? What is your price compared to your costs? What are the expenses? How much money have you got that how long do you need to survive financially at home or paying bills until the money starts to flow in? There's a whole level of stuff that before you start is ideal to know. But you're right, can't afford it at that point because you're bootstrapping it, you're doing it grassroots like you've described it, and I get it, and a lot of people do that. So for me, I tend to say in business a couple of years. So once you've got past that, the hustle, you've got some money coming in, you're now sort of making some money, but you're not really sure how much money, and so you've got a bit of cash flow rolling in. That's when you can afford to start to say, what, I need that advice, I need that coach, I need that mentor, I need the help. But what I would encourage is people that are starting out from the beginning, there's a lot of available material that's free now. So, there are courses, there's free materials. I mean, I've do a whole raft of stuff that is readily available for free that you can learn a lot from that if you wanted to get started with before you get into the paying for, the next level of advice, if you like.
So when it comes to CPA-ness, is it international or is it really geographical? And what I mean by that, country specific, because there's tax laws. There are certain rules that people in the financial game, particularly in the United States, I know this, they have to abide by a certain code. They can't say certain things. They can't insinuate certain things, and they can't divulge too much history of their clients. Is it the same way for you in Australia, or are you able to, since you have ties to Canada, are you able to function and advise people in North America as well?
So from a CPA perspective, from tax perspective, absolutely, country by country, everywhere is different. The laws are different. What I do in the financial education space goes across every country, because I'm talking about understanding your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your cash flow, your budgets, the numbers, and they're the same wherever you are. There's still a tax component in it that you need to get the advice from your local CPA, accountant, whoever the relevant people are.
Right.
But from an education on the numbers in business and how to use that to grow, I've got an international audience and I can work anywhere, because, as I say, it's the education piece rather than what taxes do I have to pay and when and how does this work and what's that.
Now, this is a personal question I'm going to ask you. A personal question from me in my own life. My wife has started a small business, a micro business, which is growing. And she said to me, I don't want QuickBooks. I don't need it because it's not giving me what I really want right now. All I want to know is who has an order, how much I spent on making the product, how much I charged them for the product. She basically wants to track all her numbers, but she wants something simple. Is there a very simple program for that?
Look, I think that there are lots of programs around. A lot of them are quite simple. There's a lot of free ones around as well that would do that basic kind of numbers, but it's a case of doing a bit of research as to what is relevant locally, because depending on whether or not you have got taxes that are being paid. So if you've got your sales tax or VAT or GST, depending on kind of where you are in the world, you need to make sure that the accounting system is tracking that if you need to be reporting it.
Okay. When it comes to businesses and their cash flow, a lot of people don't know. They see cash coming in, but that doesn't mean they have cash flow, because you have cash flowing out as well. Many businesses, depending on what you're in, if you're in the food service business, one of your biggest items is food cost, and the next one is your payroll.
Yeah.
So when they're struggling with cash flow, what's your best advice?
My best advice is to be really delving into the numbers. One of the reasons that cash flow can be a problem is actually more to do with pricing than the number of sales or the money in, money out. So it's a case of looking at what are the costs of product, and your food business is a classic example. You've got the cost of the product, but you've also got that payroll cost of producing it, making it, selling it, whatever the exact business is. And a lot of accountants will set up their clients, the business accounting system, where it shows sales less cost of product, and then you've got all the expenses and the payroll lands down the bottom. I like to go, well, how much payroll is relevant to producing what you're selling?
Yeah.
And putting that in the cost of sales, because to me, it's a vital part. And whether or not it's something that you're producing, like a food type production business, or if it's just a pure service business where you're selling time for money, then having the cost of that in there means you can start to see how much money you're making on it and whether your pricing is right. And sometimes your pricing's limited. That's what everybody pays. That's the sale price. Then you've got to go the other way and go, okay, well, if I can only sell it for that, how can I sort of minimize my costs? How can I be more efficient in doing it? How can we get the same product at a lesser price? How can we reduce our costs so that our profit is greater when we've got a ceiling on revenue? So yeah, it's looking at that is often one of the issues. And for me, looking at a week by week cash flow forecast for 12 to 14 weeks to really go, how much money is coming in? What do I need to pay on what days? If you've got a fortnightly payroll, it doesn't fall nicely in the middle of the month, end of the month, then you'll end up with 3 fortnights, months, all sorts of.
You used a local term that not many of us know.
Okay.
Fortnight.
Okay, bi-weekly. Sorry. I know. Yep. I have to remember which language I'm talking. So if you have bi-weekly payroll, or you end up with 3 in a month every so often, right?
Yeah,
if it's monthly, yes. So you've got different things payable at different times in the month, and being able to work out week by week, how is that tracking? Because over the whole month you might be fine, but you might get to the 10th of the month and go, I've got payroll and I don't have the funds in the account.
A lot of people have that with their basic paycheck. So,
well, and that's what I started with. It's like you may or may not know how to work it well at home in your paycheck side, but in a business, there's so many more moving parts in it. Yeah. And that's what complicates it if you're not careful. And it's about keeping it simple.
So there's a unique framework that I believe you came up with. Tell me about that. And it's based around numbers. So what did you come up with?
So what I've identified through some of my own mistakes, and I, as an accountant, you would expect that I wouldn't make numbers mistakes,
right? But
I have. I've got myself in my own version of cash flow crises and been in a pickle and been in real financial strife at various times along the way. And I've, at one point, I was just ignoring it. I just buried my head in the sand and went, you know what? If I just need to keep these clients happy, I just need to, get some more clients in, hustle, get more revenue, and it will be okay. And I did not look at my numbers at all until actually my business manager quit and said, you can't afford to replace me. And I kind of went, oh my God, is it really that bad? And then I started to look at the numbers. And what I've realized in doing that and a number of other lessons along the way is different situations require focus on different numbers. So, when you've got a cash flow problem, you need to be looking at certain numbers. When your business is growing, you need to be looking at a different set of numbers.
Yeah.
And
I've heard that.
It's not quite the, oh, well, this is what you need to be paying attention to. So I've developed this model called the Profitable Modern Business Framework that identifies what different situations most businesses go through in their life cycle and what numbers to focus on. Because it's what's happening in your business, not necessarily the stage of the business. Certainly there are numbers you look at to start with, but you can have cash flow problems when you start out in business because you don't have any income coming in.
Right.
But if the business is doing some major growth spurt, you can have a cash flow crisis, when business is going really, really well because of timing issues. So sometimes different situations in the different stages of business and they're different numbers you need to focus on.
Now, as you've progressed through this life in your CPA-ness, you just talked about one lesson that you've learned and the culmination of that lesson. So what are some of the other lessons you've learned along the way?
Look, too many to enumerate, but it's kind of like one of those. Actually, one of the biggest lessons I learned was just how hard business is. In that, as a CPA, I'd worked in, firms. I was a partner in a firm, and the partnership dissolved. I went out on my own. I thought, oh yeah, happy days, all good. And, had a chunk of clients, and off I went. But I had no idea how to run a business. None at all. So even though I had all this training, I really didn't know how to run a business. And what saved my bacon in those days was a couple of clients who paid me 12 months worth of fees up front.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to pay you our fees up front. We obviously had worked with me for a while, happy with me, knew I'd be doing the right thing because you're going to need the money. And I went, okay, thank you. And, got a bit further down the track and went, oh, thank heavens for Harry was his name, one of them. And I can't remember the name of the other one, but Harry particularly comes to mind. Thank you, Harry, because without you, I may not have survived that first year of business. And how crazy is that?
Yeah. And I am a person, I've changed my mindset. I used to think, why isn't this on a subscription? But now I've kind of flipped to the opposite. Why can't I pay it in full? And it's becoming less and less that people will take a year's full payment. And there are so many things because I hate nitpicky bills. I hate $12 bills, $20 bills. The ones that are less than $50 a month. I hate those because I should be able to just pay that for the whole year. But a lot of times they don't offer that anymore, which I don't understand because that goes directly in your cash. That's like having a gift card for the next 12 months, which is one of the things I believe it was Starbucks when the COVID happened. That's one of the things that kept them afloat because there was a reserve of money from all these gift cards that people had bought. Additionally, if you could give a new entrepreneur, a 5-year-in entrepreneur who's basically doing it, what advice would you give them that they should pay attention to?
Okay, so the startup entrepreneur, the advice would be to right from the get-go, get a good accountant on board, get a good CPA on board to give you some of that starting advice and learn a little bit about the numbers. I think if I can dive back to your previous question a little bit on that too, is the other big lesson I learned was I needed to learn all about sales and marketing. That is massive because if you can't sell and if you can't market and get people to want to buy from you, you haven't even got a business to be worrying about your cash flow. So learn about your sales and marketing and get someone that can get some good advice or do a little bit of learning about what the numbers are. And what I usually suggest for them is to take a simple accounting system. As I say, in Australia we use Xero a lot, which is Xero. It is really simple. And I say, look, for the first 6 months, do it yourself. I'll give you a few lessons and get you started, but you learn it yourself because in doing that, you start to really understand money in, money out, what your expenses are, what you're paying for. You've got a real finger on the pulse when you're doing it yourself. For the entrepreneur that's 5 years in, it's more about, okay, you've got an established business now, depending whether it's going well or not, because 5 years in doesn't always mean that it's going well, can still be in cash flow crisis, but be getting some advice there and support, setting those financial goals, determining what your revenue I'm not a big one for a revenue goal as a major number to look at, but it's a good one to say, look, I made 150,000 last year. Let's go for 200,000 this year. And because the moment you've kind of said that and put it down and said that's what it is, it never ceases to amaze me. But every single time I do it, my clients have done it. If you don't make the 200, you might be at 195,000 or something, but you're so close. Like, I don't know how it works. Like, it's one of those sort of mindset funny things that seems to somehow, because you've said it and you're thinking about it, it kind of happens. You make it happen. So setting those goals and getting some advice and mentoring to build the business to what you want it to be. I mean, not everyone wants to be making lots and lots of money. Some people just want a business that allows them to have enough money to pay the bills and still be home with the kids to, help them with their homework or pick them up from school or those sorts of things. So we've all got a different vision of what success is for us, but get someone to help you to determine what that looks like financially and then hold you accountable to making sure you're on track on a month-by-month basis.
This is the last question I'm going to ask you, and this is from your perspective. How many of your clients or people that you've worked with say they want to be entrepreneurs, but they end up making themselves a job?
More than I'd like to think. I think the reality is, so I think there's two sides of that. One is the people that go into business doing what I would call a standard business, a traditional business, one that's been around for a long time, like your hairdresser, your motor mechanic, your standard businesses that we all know, right? And use and need. And most of those, absolutely, they bought a job. They're not an entrepreneur. They have just simply gone into a traditional type of business to do it for themselves, and definitely they're in a job. Then there are the ones that are the people that have probably gone into business in the last 5, maybe 10 years, but certainly the last 5 years, who have come up with some new idea that perhaps doesn't already exist. So it's maybe based on new technology. It's something that a lot of them are consulting or contracting or coaching or those sorts of things in a very specific niche on something that is very specific. And whilst they may have a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset in the sense that they've come up with this great idea and they want to change the world and do good, a lot of them end up with really less than a job in terms of revenue because they don't have what it takes to. They don't know enough about how to build a business. They don't know enough about the sales and marketing, making sure that they're getting out to the right audience and selling and knowing their numbers to make it grow. So I actually think there are a lot fewer entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, true entrepreneurs, than people think there are. Because I think the true entrepreneurs, they come up with an idea, they build a business, they make it big, they often sell it on, and they start all over again. And that is entrepreneurs. Whereas I think most people do end up with a job, and some of them are not being paid as well as they used to be in their job.
So do you have your own podcast?
I do.
Now, don't you want to plug that podcast right now?
Yeah, so it's called Seeing Through the Numbers. And, we talk, obviously, all things numbers on that. And some other things because, despite I start with numbers, but I've learned so much else about business that, you end up talking about other things as well as that. But it's, starting at the numbers level.
But you've got books, you've got podcasts, you're a speaker, you got courses. What don't you do?
I'm not sure. As an educator, I think that my big mission is that there are too many business people that go into business that end up failing because they don't understand their numbers. They haven't got the cash flow. They didn't have enough money to start with. All sorts of reasons that fundamentally come down to financial literacy. Yep. And so my big mission is to educate as many people as I can to reduce that failure rate. And if that means, and from my perspective, the free podcasts, the articles, the books, they don't cost a lot. There's a lot of information that's readily available. And that's my give back to the business world to help my fellow business owners to do well. There's only a limit to how many people I can work with because to get access to me, there's only one of me and only so many hours in the day. So the more that I can do that to spread that knowledge and to help people, that's what my big mission is, to make a difference in the number of business failures, because it's not just the business, it's the emotional impact on the family, some people I know have lost houses and marriages, the whole thing. It's so much broader than just looking at the numbers and the impact of it. And if I can make a difference, then I feel like my life has been worthwhile.
Awesome. So how can people find you?
Best way to find me is through my website, amandafisher.global.
Yes. Or how about .com.au?
Yes, amandafisher.com.au does exist, although we're moving it across. So amandafisher.global is one of my websites, and the other one is thecashflowqueen.com. So all my material is available on those. And and of course, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, I kind of all over those as well. The Cash Flow Queen is probably the easiest way to find me, because there are a lot of Amanda Fishers in the world. So, finding the right one can be a challenge.
That's true. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow is a blessing. Today is a gift. Look forward for tomorrow, but live in the now. Live for today, plan for tomorrow. That is what we're here to do. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And what it all comes down to, what it all started with, was love. I have to say that. It started with love. But somehow, many of us have gotten it twisted because some external thing has corrupted our firmware to where we're not living within love within ourselves. You have to love yourself. And I'm not saying be arrogant about it, but be appreciative. I want you to just shake your own hand. Look at your arms, look at your knees, look at your thigh, look at the moles on your face. This is why I say when you get out the shower, stand there naked and see what a miracle you are. I mean, you can give me all the scientists in the world and I cannot make you. They cannot make me. You are a billionaire. We are here to do two things. We are here to have this experience. That's part of the global of it. But we are here to teach. But first we must learn. All that is love. So when you get out the shower, stand there butt booty naked, look at yourself, look at that flabby thing that you have, look at that thing, that ab that you can like press it together and you can actually have some abs. Whatever it is, it's you. And you have to love that. Because if you don't love that, you can't love anything else. It's just pretend. Start with yourself. And just like the sun combusts on itself and then it spreads out, shines on everything else and illuminates it. You need to be that sun. Fire that ball up within yourself and it will spread and come back to you. Till next time, love you all. Peace.